I'm Dylan Ratigan. I've interviewed nearly every CEO and most world leaders during the past 25 years. And now on Bootstrapping, I'm turning my attention to the new CEOs and the irrepressible entrepreneurs leading the next generation of innovation in the world. Welcome back to tastylive. I am Dylan Ratigan. Time for our second edition of Ideas to Invoices, a special series here on Bootstrapping. And my guest today, Peter Shankman. I was with us about a year and a half ago. Hi, Peter. Nice to see you back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to see you. I remember you did a lot of work actually regarding ADHD. You actually have a podcast called Faster Than Normal, focusing on what you call the superpowers of the faster than normal brain, and have been involved with a series of businesses through your Shankminds Breakthrough Network, working with companies like Adobe, Silvana, National Car Rental, Manscaped.com, Sealface Fuel, and many, many others. And so it seemed appropriate to have you as our second guest for Ideas to Invoices. What do you think inspires an initial business idea, and how do you recognize its potential for something that's even worth spending time on beyond being an idea?
I mean, for me, it's always been about what pisses me off, and is there a way to make it better so it doesn't piss me off? I mean, that's literally every idea I've ever started or every company I've ever started has started with that germ of an idea. This thing is pissing me off. Is there a way to do it better so it doesn't piss me off?
And so, for instance, I don't like flying. It pisses me off. I would like teleportation so that I don't have to fly. So I'm assuming that there's more to your filter than just
right.
Whether it's
perhaps you find a middle ground. So I enjoy flying, but one of the things I did not enjoy was sitting next to an insurance salesman who kept trying to talk to me for 50 flights in a row. And then one day I sat next to Miss Texas, and all of a sudden I had a very enjoyable flight. So in the summer of 2003, I started a company called Air Introductions, which allowed you to choose your seatmate before you got on the airplane. And I built it up to about 50,000 members or so. And they paid every time they took a flight, they paid like $5 to see who else had signed up for that same flight. And the number one thing people wanted in a seatmate was someone who would just stay quiet and not talk to them. But unfortunately, I was a little too early in the process. Had I done it 10, 15 years later, I would have back-ended it into Facebook or Google and Expedia, and I would have made a killing, but I was a little too early. But I built it, wound up selling it to private equity. But it was one of those things that, I can't create teleportation, but what can I do to make things a little better? That's sort of that middle ground. So it's the premise that you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf.
What are some of the first steps that you would consider to transition an idea into an invoice?
Well, here's the thing. For me, I'm ADHD, right? So what does that mean? That means that I have two speeds and only two speeds. I have namaste and I'll cut a bitch. To put that another way, that means I have 0 and 100 miles an hour, and there's no middle ground. So while a lot of people would write down a business plan and subject it to multiple scrutiny and have millions of people look at it and get advice, if I have an idea and I'm like, let's see what happens, I just go for it. Let's see what happens. Let's get a prototype. Let's start. Let's do something. About 2 months ago, I thought about reviving a company I originally had that I sold called Help a Reporter Out. And I wanted to revive it under a new name and make it better and create a new thing. And so I came up with something called Source of Sources. And the premise was I could do it better than the company I sold Help a Reporter to 15 years ago. And Source of Sources, I took a day to build the website and to create the copy. And then I launched it. And I launched it under the guise of, let's see what happens. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, it costs me a day. So I think there are the highway of the future, or the highway that gets you to the future, is littered with the dead bodies of ideas that weren't terrible ideas. They just spent too much time stuck in committee and they died. I don't believe
your advice is go to market as quick as you can and get real feedback. Don't spend too much time in mental masturbation.
Get real feedback and get something out there. I'm not saying you have to go spend $1 billion to do it. Start small. And if it works, you'll see. Then start putting money behind it. But, it cost me, I think, $200 to build the new site. and to get it up and to get it running. Also it helps when you have an audience. There are people out there who I've been talking to either through my newsletters or my other companies for 20 something years now. And so they trust me. And because of that, I can go say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. This might be useful for you. And I'm not just a random person approaching them. That speaks volumes to constantly figuring out what you can put out into the universe that's helpful, as opposed to what you can put in the universe that just is out there to help you. In other words, if I'm on LinkedIn and I hear and someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I love what you're doing, I'd love to connect, and I connect with them, and the first email they send me after I connect with them is a sales pitch, that's a problem. Right? But
well, that kind of goes to my next question, which is how do you, let's assume you go quick, you have some traction, you get some early positive response, doesn't have to be remarkable, but enough to say, okay, there's some fire here. And you want to start doing some version of team building, hire one person, hire half a person, 1/3 of a person, get some help. How do you think about team building?
So a lot of what I've learned in my 20 something years of doing this is that you have to hire people who are brilliant at the things you suck at. And you have to find the right person and trust them enough to let them do their job. I've lost people.
So how do you do that? How do you do that?
A lot of it for me is very much trial and error. I have at this point in my life
do you recruit through social networks and professional networks?
I recruit through people I know. You have to go through people you know, because people you know are the people you trust.
Not through LinkedIn or social media or Monster or any sort of like web-based recruiting.
I want people who know me.
Some kind of a personal reference.
I want people who know, well, not only a personal reference from the person I'm hiring, but a personal reference from the person who knows me and knows my quirks. This guy, and says, this guy might be the best program in the world, but you and him are not going to get along. Right? And he will ruin you because you simply will not gel. This guy's a very good programmer, maybe not the best in the world, but very good, and you and him share a similar brain. Right? On the flip side, I also go to my network to find people who are the complete opposite of me. My assistant could not be more different than me, but that's why she's been my assistant for 15 years, because she calls me on my bullshit and she knows what I have to do and when I have to do it.
And what about raising capital? Let's say you make it through you get a positive feedback, you make it through the team assembly aspect of it, and you decide you want to raise some money, even a little bit, the third-party capital of any kind. How do you think about third-party capital? Do you do it early? Do you do it late? Do you try to avoid it altogether? If you have to do it, how do you do it? Like, what's your thought process on third-party capital?
So I'm not a fan of doing it. I'm not a fan of raising money. Every company I've started, I've sold, has been self-funded. And the reason being is because the second you take outside funding, it's no longer your company and it's no longer your exit. It's no longer your strategy. It's an exit, right? The second you take that first round, your goal is eventually an exit. And it has to be because the people who gave you the money wanted to. I'm not saying taking money is evil. I'm just saying that in my world, what I've learned is to hold out for as long as humanly possible before you actually have to take it.
Delay as long as you can, because you give up a lot when you take outside money, basically.
Correct.
The most
I think also,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
The most valuable resource for a self-funded startup is the time and intention of the founder or founders.
Yes, until such point as the company gets big enough where things are required that is not in the founder's wheelhouse, that are not in the founder's wheelhouse. So for instance, when I sold my last company, I could have built it to 10 times its size, but then I would have had to be an HR director. I would have had to work on benefits, and I would have had to do human relations and all that stuff.
Use your time up to the point where it's going to make you do jobs you hate, and then find another way to do it.
Bring it out to someone. Exactly. Whether
it's to sell it or to just keep it medium. Don't let it get so big you have to do a job you hate, basically.
100%. Whatever the situation is, right? You do what you're great at, and you find people. If you need to take that next step and it's something you're not great at, you find people who are.
And my last sort of question and thought for you is some interesting anecdotes from your past building businesses that you think are instructive. Anything that strikes you as sort of a metaphor for success or failure, setbacks, challenges, and glory, ecstasy and agony, all that?
A couple of quotes. The first one being that if you can't change the people around you, change the people around you. And I had a former skydiver friend tell me that, and it's one of the best quotes I ever heard, because a lot of times we get so slammed by people who we think are our friends, but who don't have the same guts or drive as us, and they'll give us their thoughts on our idea and say, "Wow, that's scary. That's terrible. I don't think it'll ever work," because they simply don't have the vision that you do. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Doesn't mean they want you to fail. It just means that they don't have it. And so be careful of whose advice you take. Listen to everyone, but be very careful of whose advice you take and implement. And the second thing I'd suggest is that at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are that when you go to sleep, you're not sure whether you spent the day working or having fun. If you're not sure, you're doing the right thing.
I love both of those. I'll give you one from the Italian side because I'm beaming into you from Italy right now, and I don't know how to say it in Italian, but their phrase is execution eats strategy for breakfast, which I think kind of goes to your first thing, which is go do it. Don't spend a bunch of time in committee.
Done is better than perfect.
Yeah. A pleasure to have you back. I hope to see you sooner. It's been a year and a half. Hopefully I won't have to wait so long. As somebody who speaks very quickly, I appreciate your rapid verbal.
Pleasure was mine. Anytime,
man. Peter Shankman, is there an entity or that you want me to promote? You're associated with so many. If you're
I mean, throw it. Sourceofsources.com is the new website. Sourceofsources.com.
Sourceofsources.com, Peter's latest promoted or promotable undertaking. I am Dylan Ratigan. This has been our second edition of Ideas to Invoices. You're watching Tasty Live. More of just that right after this.